So welcome back to Hacking Pro Tips Deep Dive. Today, again, I have the honor of sitting down with Jason Haddix, where we're going to dive into some cool content, cool bugs. But before we do that, Jason's got a new job at BugCrowd, the VP of Researcher Growth. I
Correct.
got that right? Yes. Okay.
VP of Research and Growth.
Nice.
Yeah.
So congrats. That's
Thank you.
just a quick second. Kind of like what's the job entail doing that versus what you were doing before?
Oh, absolutely. So as VP of Trust and Security, I was mostly working on the client side and the company side, right? Where I was trying to kind of shepherd our best clients and hardest like programs to be successful, right? And then that actually ends up looking a lot like solutions engineering or solutions or sales engineering sometimes. And so I would do that and then help out on security initiatives on the inside of the business, which you always need as a company. I'm a researcher. I'm a hacker. I bug hunt, and so I wanted for a long time to get back to a researcher-facing role. And so we have one group inside of BugCrowd called Researcher Success, which deals with programs operations and is probably one of the hardest working teams I've ever met. Abigail and Chloe and Sam have all worked on that team. If you've ever interacted with BugCrowd people, and then we decided that we have a heavy push into education and recruitment for 2019. And so we created a new group called Researcher Growth. So we have two dedicated groups for researchers at BugCrowd, as well as a whole engineering team dedicated for researchers. And so, so I am mostly focused on recruiting and education. So BugCrowd University, one of my main projects, as well as the BugCrowd Ambassador Program, and just hitting the pavement with the bug bashes and everything that we're doing now to try to get out there and make the researcher experience better, educate people, and find more hackers to get on the platform.
That's awesome. I love any initiative that is kind of helping hackers and making them better and seeing kind of the whole community grow. So congrats on that. That's wicked.
Thank you. Thank you.
So today, you and I had a pre-discussion, but we thought we would dive into Tavis's Ghostscript, remote code execution vulnerabilities that was disclosed a couple of months ago, I guess now. So on that note, can you give us kind of a rundown on like what it is we're talking about? Like what was the deal here?
Yeah, I mean, this is seems like a file format bug that Tavis found, and I really like this bug because you and I were talking about it before the show started, but the idea that that a file can contain code that it gets executed by a parser is, Tavis's bugs are so technical sometimes they go way over my head sometimes, right? And this one I understand because I've seen it in many incarnations now, and so his bug basically took an image and set code inside of the binary part of the image, and a parser called Ghostscript, which is utilized in Imagemagick, basically would execute this code if it was part of the file, the binary part of the file. And it could do things like, echo out system variables or run commands or, whatever you think you could do in a Linux shell at the end of the day. And it wasn't the only thing he disclosed for Ghostscript. He also found multiple crashes and stuff that he'll probably take way further than I could. But this was the one that was kind of like, oh, well, look, this is another Imagemagick bug, and yeah, we need to take a look at this. I don't have information on how much of the internet was actually affected by this one, but yeah, I like the style of this bug, or not style. I like the classification of this bug because it's applicable to a lot of bug hunters. I've seen it in the cross-site scripting world, and then I've also seen it in the command injection world, and even in the SSRF world and stuff like that. So definitely wanted to talk a little bit about it today.
Yeah, that's wild for so many reasons. So just taking a quick step back, so like we kind of touched on it, but what is Ghostscript? What struck me was you have Imagemagick, but then this is also in Ghostscript, and like the fix is essentially disable Ghostscript in
Right.
Imagemagick. So can you, in a nutshell, like describe what
Yeah.
Ghostscript is?
Yeah, so Ghostscript is a PostScript and PDF interpreter. It's a rendering engine, basically, and it'll take a whole bunch of page description languages called PDLs, and help you convert them between different types of file formats. So it's been around for quite a while. I think something like 20 years. It's deployed across a whole bunch of platforms. And Imagemagick uses Ghostscript to render PostScript and PDF files. So anytime you render PostScript, this language or this format, and then PDF files, Ghostscript and Imagemagick work together to translate where possible, basically.
Okay. Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense. And so for those that are kind of like unaware or maybe just getting into bug bounties, Imagemagick was a library that was associated with like a widespread remote code execution, Imagemagick, the great name, which was I want to say it was like April 2016 or something like that, like in and around spring of that year, I
Yeah.
think.
Yep.
Yeah. So I thought it was really cool. Like seeing Tavis's tweet about this was like, in my mind, like once that came out in Imagemagick, like I thought, okay, all eyes are going to be on Imagemagick. Like things are done here, right? But that's
Mhm.
obviously not the case. Like are the bugs, like are there going to be more bugs here? Like how does somebody take this knowledge of Imagemagick, now Tavis shaking these guys out, and continue to look at that from like a parsing perspective? Like, what would you do if you wanted to build off of Tavis's research?
Well, I think this story. I'll reiterate it. Right? Is if I'm working with he's obviously working with like Ghostscript, which is a interpreter that's built into a lot of software, right? So he knows it's widely deployed. And I'm not a Tavis. I'm very
I
short
don't think
of
many of
that.
us are.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sure he has, his code review kind of methodology fits in here if some of this code is open source. And actually, I'm not sure if any of the code is open source, but also just like this is, a subset of file format fuzzing, right? Like, or anything that takes, a binary file, you create an instrument fuzzing files for these parsers or interpreters and stuff like that. And so, one of the things I saw, I went to a bug bash in Miami. And the bug bash in Miami, one of the researchers who found one of these bugs was doing show and tell at the end of the day on a parser bug specifically. And what was cool about his methodology when doing this is he actually had, when he was doing show and tell, he had this folder of vulnerability classifications like cross-site scripting, command injection, server-side request forgery, and then just general DOS. And they were all files built with, those bug classes built into the binary payloads and the names of the files themselves. So, for cross-site scripting, he had like 10 different versions of image types with XSS payloads in the name, as well as in the binary header of the file, as well as in the metadata and of the image file. And so, he would obviously very systematically try to find any uploader on, this is not a widely deployed software, but this is a custom application, and any uploader he could find, he would try to upload each one of these things and see what would happen to meet an error case. And this is file format fuzzing, or it's basically input fuzzing of an uploader or a parse or something. And so he also had binary files of other sorts. He had PDFs, and he was very methodical about each type of vulnerability he was trying to trigger, as well as how he built the binary files. And although I've done that every once in a while, and I've seen it in the bug bounty world, and I've actually popped some bugs doing that before. The level of organization and payloads that he had ready to do that was amazing. And also, it just kind of let me know that like I need to up my game when it comes to these things, because I see so many parsers
Mm.
just not doing this correctly, like or so, like taking some type of header from the file or some type of naming convention and echoing it back in the application. And I think there's a lot of bugs right there. And the fact that this is such an open source library, I guess to answer your original question, is like, yeah, absolutely. Like we thought we were done with Imagemagick, and no, we're definitely not. And this is not a complex bug, right? It's not a Tavis bug where like I have to go do 5 hours of research to figure out
Mm-hmm.
like how this works. It's definitely something that is something that I've seen incarnations of across a wide array of software.
I want to echo that point because just like you, like me, anytime I go to look for like a payload that I've used before, like I struggle and think like, where did I actually save this? And I've seen like others, like the training from Mario Hendrick, where he's got like a repo of just like every file type that you can imagine and a cross-site scripting payload in it. And just seeing that type of organization, like it makes you much more effective as a bug hunter. And in my mind, like if you extrapolate that out, the more effective you are and organized at that, the less time you're going to spend or waste, which means like more bugs for you to find. And in my mind, it just perpetuates that positive cycle. So that is a huge takeaway for me. It's I've got to start organizing this stuff. I plan to do it. Stop talking about it. So I appreciate that. The other side of it that I found interesting is kind of like identifying this type of functionality that provides this to you. So when you've gone to test it, has it just, and maybe at the Bug Bash event, was it just a regular upload where you started trying to fuzz things out? Or was it you seeing like an image being resized, say for example, or like giving you different sizes out of it? What was it that like when you found it that triggered you to say, hey, I'm going to fuzz this with different files?
I think there's three cases that I usually I mean I'm not an expert at this, right? Just like you, I could use a lot of organization in this realm and yeah, and methodology here. I'm still building it out. But when I look at like traffic that goes across burp or something like that, I tend to look for, yes, uploads is the first one, right? Like a file upload, any type of file upload, I prioritize in my testing very highly. Anytime I see a multi-part form, I also prioritize very highly. There seems to be a lot of problems with multi-part form related functions. Anytime I see a URL parsed, where I would usually also check for SSRF, I also check for linking to an image in case it gets resized that I have originally uploaded from somewhere else, or I pull from a third-party site. So there's a lot of integrations between like Facebook and Twitter or something like that, where you pull your profile image over from one, and maybe one has protection in it and has removed or is not, my code, JavaScript code in this case, maybe for cross-site scripting, is not executable in Twitter. But if Facebook pulls it across and doesn't clean up the data, maybe the function that did that in Facebook might be vulnerable or something like that, right? So anytime I see an integration between two sites, I try both ways of communication to try to pop one of those like cross-site scripting level bugs. And then the three areas of the file format I mostly care about are adding the payloads to the name. So like script alert 1.jpg or png or whatever. The binary header, adding it to a binary header without breaking the file format as well, to making sure the bit lengths match up and everything. And then also every section of the metadata in case the metadata of the image also gets parsed into something. And so that would be kind of where I would look in my application traffic. But yeah, image uploads are obviously the first ones. Yeah.
Cool. You sparked my mind, which I think is something I can share as well, because we've got it fixed and we'll probably disclose it when we have it as well. But we had a hacker at our recent Montreal event, H1514, and they were testing one of our applications. And our application, when you did this, I wasn't even aware of this. So you would go and you would find your, let's say, profile. And you could upload an image. And so it's product related, so I shouldn't say profile, but you find your product, you upload an image. And they were testing this and they saw that it didn't work here. And then they found more functionality where you kind of upload another image, uploaded it and it didn't work there. And they kept going through all these different places and they found one where it's all related to product image uploads, but it was like mass upload your images. And when you did that, we had different code that then took them and resized them and started creating content for you. And it was that one that was vulnerable actually to this Ghostscript vulnerability, resulted in a remote code execution. But it was interesting to see, and they shared it at the event, the hacker talk about how they went through different ones, and then it was like the third or the fourth attempt where they finally found like multiple image upload that had done some type of interaction on the back end. So for those like hackers, the takeaway for me was like, don't just assume because one is fixed that all of them are fixed, right? Like, particularly with this, you might not have, goes back to that idea of like the image being manipulated, whereas like there's all kinds of different ways it could be manipulated in all different places.
Yeah. There's a whole section about about this is that's a gray area as well. I talk about it a little bit. I talked about it a little bit in my first ever talk I did about the bug hunters methodology or how to shot web. There's also the idea of instead of popping a shell or with code like kind of command injection style or cross-site scripting, there's also this idea of like image uploaders like not really protecting the resources of the server either, right? There's a whole bunch of DOS conditions that you can put in, like I forget in the seclist project which I run, there was one that misrepresents the number of pixels that a JPEG can have, and then there was another one with a GIF as well. And these things also can be vulnerabilities of kind of the application level DOS style, right? Which depending on how much you care about that. And then there's just like the opportunity for people just to store bad stuff on your servers, right? Like malware or like questionable content or something. I think those are also things that a lot of people don't think about, but might be considered like bad. And so there's a whole bunch of polyglots that you can get into making like files that look like one thing but execute as another. And if you don't have like any kind of security filter on just the file storage itself, yeah, there's a whole file upload realm of testing that honestly I'm not super great at. So there's a lot of stuff to do when you upload a file. There's a lot of test cases to instrument.
So this might be a curveball because I realize I didn't prepare you for the question, but it's
No
coming
worries.
out of you saying this. But if you wanted to improve that skill set, like you're talking about right now, like you don't have a ton of it with this particular area, how would you go about that? Like, what would be your steps if you wanted to level up in that specific realm?
So I would probably break. At first, I would prepare all the files, right? Like the first step in my methodology, prepare all the files like the tester did at the bug bash.
Okay.
I would classify in the end what is the objective that I'm trying to achieve, and I think that for bug bounty hunting, it's probably code injection, right, of some sort, usually very similar to command injection where you're inserting Linux commands or Nix commands. Then it would be usually cross-site scripting or some type of other code injection that's application-based, like SQL injection or something like that. So I would create folders with a broad level category of that, and then application DOS as well. Then I'd start creating those file formats for every different image type, for PDFs, maybe for other just plain binary files, and document what each one does, probably in a GitHub. I'm sure someone has done a project like this already. And then I'd probably write in my burp as I do passive spidering or as I do active spidering on an application. I already have like to pay special attention to like file upload, right? The burp check, there is one to tell you that there's a file upload, as well as you can make a pretty easy one in the regex in burp to inform you of multi-part forms and other stuff like that. And anytime you see a URL as part of a parameter, as part of a path, I would set up those and then systematically go through and try to upload. Now, I did see on Twitter the other day, there was like a file upload tool that somebody came out with. I'm unsure of how good it is. I'll probably review that. And I did know at one point there was a file upload series of like CTF challenges, right? Like a hack to learn type thing.
Right.
And I'll try to find the links after the show. But I remember there was like a series of file, like the first one is like, yeah, you can upload anything, shell the server pretty easily, with generic code injection. And then the next one was like, oh yeah, they filter out certain things and you can only do certain attacks. And it was like this cascading level of difficulty. And I would probably train on that for quite a while until I felt that my set of files was right, like my file format. And this is just me. Like other people have better methodologies for this, but that's probably what I would do.
No, that's awesome. I think it's so easy to say like my methodology is kind of like terrible or like this is like that kind of approach where like you kind of hum and haw on how you would do things. But I think having that out there, like so many people are kind of like apprehensive about sharing, kind of like how they approach things because there's I don't know, self-conscious, I guess. Like I'm particularly in that camp too, like because I know I do like a lot of run and gun stuff where I'm just looking for like interesting things and I need to improve that. Um, so it's just cool to have like a candid conversation to say like this is how I'd approach things, like whether or not it's like the be all and end all. I think having that out there to discuss is hugely valuable.
If
So
you'll excuse the typing for 1 second, I think there was a really good presentation on this by a tester at NCC group named Sarush Dalili, I think. I
Yeah.
might have butchered his name, but it's called File in the Hole,
Oh,
and it's
okay.
all about file upload testing. So yeah, after the show, hopefully I can pull back some of these links. But there's also a video I think he did on YouTube, and it goes over, generic and advanced edge cases and file upload vulnerabilities. Not all the ones we've talked about in this, but it's probably the best one I've seen, the best presentation I've seen talking about file upload vulnerabilities.
Sweet.
Yeah.
You also sparked my mind. There was a Burp extension, and I have it on like my list of things to check out and try, because I think Burp had a blog post not too long ago about file uploads, and they made reference to like a file upload extension that checks things out for vulnerabilities. And so same like you. I'm not too sure how it works. I haven't looked at it, but I think it does exist, and it might be in the Burp App Store. It might have been actually been developed by them. I can't remember,
Mhm.
but there's that as well. And if it's anything like ActiveScan, like you can take a look at the source code and kind of get an idea of where the mindset's at and how you
Yeah.
approach things. And I think that's what's valuable is when you deconstruct and internalize.
Yeah, I think one of the ones too that I'm pretty sure this is a secondhand story through another bug hunter I know, but I think there was an instance where one of the bug hunters had a function that you could upload a file in an application too, and upon upload, the parser and the, for lack of a better term, converter, whatever function it was, would clean up the file format. But
Mm.
the site also had a separate function to reference a file on a different site, like I was talking about earlier, where you, instead of uploading your own image for your profile, you could also integrate from just a web image somewhere else. And so if that had not cleaned up the file, that other code was not the same. It wasn't cleaning up the file. It was just taking the file from somewhere else. And so like breaking up in your mind that like these functions might be different in custom applications is kind of a powerful one to like just keep in your head when you're looking at custom applications and how they deal with images or PDF uploads and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. It's definitely something to keep in mind. It's so easy, at least like when I think of all the situations where I've gone back and I've been hacking and I found like file upload and I've tried like one or two things. I'm like, I got these locked down. It's probably fine. But then like all the opportunity and the possibility there, especially when you know they're using something like Imagemagick and actually manipulating an image,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot to test there. And it's one of those fine balance situations, in my opinion, where it's easy to kind of go down a rabbit hole and be testing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But the reward and the payoff is just massive in my mind, given a
Yeah.
specific program, right? Like it depends upon which one you're testing on, but
Yep.
payoff is huge.
Yep. Absolutely.
Um, so I mean, I think we've run through kind of all the questions. We've touched on a lot. Is there anything that before we sign off that like comes immediately to your mind that we didn't touch on that you think is worth throwing out there?
Um, I don't think so. I think that with anything, I think documenting your methodology or like codifying it somehow for yourself, whether it's in like your template of writing the vulnerability itself and you keep that and it also kind of guides you through your testing steps or whatever, like is still super important. I know we've mentioned it on other versions of the podcast, but like the more I write down my methodology and what I need to do, the less I forget, and I just kind of go YOLO and like do things right. And I've been testing for like 10 years, so like it's still it's still really important to keep that documentation for yourself. In fact, um, I on my browser, you can't see it because we're doing video, but on my browser, on the top bar of my Chrome, I have every vulnerability class that I think is pretty pertinent to test um, for certain custom applications, and then every bookmark inside of there of like every good walkthrough I've seen people do. And that's how I like go back and reference stuff on like how do I know how to test this X, Y, and Z? What tools are good for this? And it's broken down kind of like that. And so like organization around testing methodology is a powerful tool, I think. So yeah.
That's I'm glad you threw that out there. I do that with kind of like the bug classifications and stuff like
Mhm.
that, like on Toronto Website Developer / hacking resources.
Mhm.
And any interesting bug, I try to have a reference to it there. And I find like even that step of just like taking the URL and adding it to that library
Mhm.
almost kind of like solidifies things for me where like even I can't think of examples now, but there will be times where I go back to that, like how did this person exploit that? Because I found a
Mhm.
similar situation, and then I can go back
Yep.
to that write-up. But I've never kind of approached it with methodology, and I always hum and haw when I walk into my office because I've got a whiteboard. But it's almost like do I just laminate something and just have it kind of like right in front of me in terms of like go through
Yep.
this stuff? But I've been using like GitHub and just creating like a methodology checklist for like even the live events, like hearing people found bugs, and it's like, oh,
Mhm.
like if I had just remembered to do that specific action, that
Yeah.
like reviewing JS files, like it's
Yeah.
so basic, but
Yeah.
sometimes you start struggling, and it's like you just throw things out the window because you
Yep.
want to find something. And if I had gone back and just followed my checklist, that would have been item 3 on it, right?
You know what's super interesting about what you said is the last bug bash we just did in Sydney for Atlassian was a huge scope. It was ginormous scope, and ginormous is not a word, but ginormous anyway.
No, it's
Uh,
appropriate.
and it was very easy to sit there and look at those targets and just get analysis paralysis.
Yep.
Like just be like, I have no idea where to start. Right? And I always tell people like, like when you have a scope that big, you start like the saying is like, how do you eat an elephant? You take one bite at a time, right? You take one domain and then you run through your methodology, and then if you feel like you've invested enough time and you're not getting anywhere, or you get a gut feeling that the site is pretty secure in all of the the normal areas that you're good at testing, you move on to another domain or site or something like that, or whatever project. And having that like that self-realization, I think, and knowing that like huge scopes are gonna seem daunting and you just have to start doing stuff
Yep.
is half of the battle. I think I tell it to a lot of bug hunters, just like get started and don't expect you to like pop a vulnerability in the first couple seconds, right? Especially at the live
Yeah.
events. It's like after I've done 4 in pretty rapid succession now, and um with the exception of ones that have like the pre-week before where people are submitting stuff, but with the ones that kind of start closer to the day everyone's there, like the P1s don't rein in as soon as the thing opens, right? It's like midday through day 1, end of day 1, and then a lot of stuff starts happening on day 2 if there's a day 2 of the event. So yeah, it's like it's also like easy to get discouraged. Don't get discouraged. Like it takes us all the same amount of time to upload these files and
Hmm.
make sure test cases are covered. I mean, like for new bug hunters, I would definitely remember some of those things.
Awesome. I think that's a perfect place to end it. So again, as always, greatly appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy, especially with the new opportunity. So thank you very much for doing this, and I'm really looking forward to the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete.
Take care.